Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar about the future of study abroad and travel abroad in a pandemic and post-pandemic world. I'm Lisa, the Dean of Newcomb-Tulane College. I am so pleased that you have all decided to join us and spend an hour hearing about the opportunities, possibilities, challenges, and rewards of studying abroad. Study abroad is one of the most important experiences we feel that our Tulane undergraduates can have. And we facilitate it through our Office of Study Abroad here at Newcomb-Tulane College. Study abroad's an incredibly rewarding and broadening experience, and it's crucial now more than ever that our students truly learn how to be global citizens, engaged citizens of the world that we all inhabit. So I know you don't really want to hear much from me. You'd much rather hear from our distinguished panelists and our wonderful students. So I'm going to turn it over to Associate Dean of the Center for Global Education, Dr. Casey Love.
Hi, everybody. As Dean Skinner said, I'm Casey Love, and I'm so very excited to moderate tonight's webinar. As Lee mentioned, I serve as the Associate Dean and Director of the NTC Center for Global Education, which oversees the Office of Study Abroad, and it also oversees the offices that serve our international student population. In addition to my role at the Center for Global Education, I also serve as the Director of the Altman Program in International Studies and Business at Tulane, and I'm also a faculty member in the Department of Political Science. So I wear many different hats here at Tulane. In addition, I'm also a very proud alumna of Tulane and Newcomb College. I have 3 degrees from Tulane, my bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and my PhD. And suffice it to say that I consider myself so very lucky to now be working at my alma mater. But enough about me. I would now like to introduce my colleague, Annie Gibson. Annie is an administrative associate professor at Tulane, and she's also the director of study abroad. So I'll turn it over to Annie. Take it away, Annie.
Thank you, Casey. It's wonderful to be here with you all and to have a moment to talk about this important topic. Again, my name is Annie Gibson. I am the director of the Office of Study Abroad, and I also have taught at Tulane for many years, classes on intercultural learning for students in the pre, during, and post-study abroad. And I've also taught extensively in Spanish and Portuguese and in Latin American studies. I am also a graduate of the Stone Center for Latin American Studies, and in New Orleans am very much involved in the dance community, and I'm also an avid drummer in a local Mardi Gras crew. So with that, we're going to get to the topic today. I'm going to speak briefly about the Office of Study Abroad, how the field has been affected due to COVID, and then give you a brief look at the future of international education and then travel more generally. Tulane's Office of Study Abroad views intercultural exchange as a real formative academic experience, and we want all of our Tulane students, whether it is through global mobility or through our on-campus programming, to develop a critical reflection of the meaning of global citizenship, as Dean Skinner mentioned in her introduction. So this means that the support that we provide for students goes beyond the administrative and advising duties and really includes practices aimed at fostering and maximizing the intercultural learning processes prior to study abroad, during a student's experience abroad, and then after they return, and then even without leaving campus, as we do see a real integral role that global experience in our local communities plays in our work. So in terms of student mobility, prior to the pandemic, our office was sending close to 600 students to 50 plus countries on close to 85 different programs. We also had been working really hard to build up capabilities to award funding for need-based scholarships. The year prior to the pandemic, we were able to award over $100,000 in need-based scholarships for study abroad. And this really supports one of our central efforts, which is to make study abroad at Tulane and inclusive practice, and not simply an activity that is for our most privileged students. So let me talk to you a little bit about how study abroad has been affected during the pandemic. The pandemic has had widespread impacts on global mobility and on campus internationalization plans. And really, the question that we ask ourselves is not so much how long are these restrictions going to last, but the question in the field is really how will our internationalization strategies adapt to help shape the new normal? And what will this kind of reset look like? So when the COVID lockdown began back in March of 2020, the provost at Tulane put a pause on all Tulane-related international travel. And so this meant that my office worked to evacuate 107 students from programs across the world. And since then, the office has been working really tirelessly to closely monitor the health, safety, and security practices in the countries where we currently operate programs. And as you can imagine, the information regarding health and safety country by country varies day to day. We are also implementing new program design possibilities to meet the needs of COVID safety protocols. We're exploring virtual global engagement opportunities to enhance our portfolio. And we're even repurposing some of our traditional study abroad programs in the short term to meet the needs of some of our international students who could not travel to Tulane due to the travel ban. So we are, through this all, really thinking really critically about the fact that COVID presents the possibility of worsen particular disparities among who can study abroad, who can't, who can travel, who can't. And so really thinking critically about our practices moving forward. During the pandemic, though there has been this pause on international travel, there have been a few students at Tulane who have petitioned to study abroad during the pandemic. And you all are going to get to hear from them soon to give you some examples of what it looks like to study abroad right now. And my office has worked with these students as well as on a few of our faculty-led programs and to create new COVID safety protocols that allow for the possibility that programs could operate if and when international travel policies allow. Of course, we must all abide by the travel restrictions that may be imposed by country policies. So for example, we have a summer program in Italy that we are currently working with through an exception to the current travel ban for summer 2021, potentially. And we're excited about this possibility that should travel be permitted, our students would be able to study and experience a place like Rome in a time when there are no tourists there. And these students to have a very localized experience and understanding how other countries are approaching COVID protocols and kind of living out the day-to-day reality of how one manages this kind of global public health crisis. Operating this program means special licensing for entry, PCR tests prior to departure throughout the program, and upon arrival back in the United States. It meant having to rethink all of our curricular and co-curricular activities to follow social distancing policies in country, as well as on-site curfews. So it's been quite a process for us to rethink how we might operate given different moments that the pandemic has placed before us. So although it still remains unclear how long these travel restrictions and closed borders will continue to impact student mobility for study abroad, at Tulane, the good news is that for now, the provost has approved study abroad for the upcoming fall, pending the lifting of the travel ban. And we know in our office, and we work to educate our students, that the study abroad experience will look different from our pre-pandemic world. And within the field of international education, it's expected that student mobility numbers will take at least 5 years to recover from the pandemic. Students who do study abroad will need to be willing to exercise a higher tolerance for ambiguity and higher levels of adaptability as we deal with shifting conditions in the field of international education and our sort of path forward in this post-pandemic world. So from our office practices, this means a really rethinking the level of support that we are able to provide for our students and helping them navigate travel during these uncertain times. So in the field, you're going to see that health, risk, and crisis management will become a major element in the decision-making of institutions, of families, and of students. There will be an increased interest in the use of technology to blend physical and virtual global learning. And there will be increased virtual global internship opportunities, for example, and increased attention on the practice of equitable international engagement experiences, who can travel, when, where, and that sort of thing. So I know many of you here are interested to know what you might be able to expect of travel moving forward from the pandemic. You've all been, locked up, canceled trips, spent those important milestones of birthdays cooped up at home. And we are coming into this new stage in the pandemic as vaccines roll out, where you might consider travel again in the not so distant future. For international flights to most destinations, at least for now, you are allowed to travel. If you're allowed to travel to the destination due to country requirements, you'll likely still have a PCR COVID test required of you at least 72 hours prior to departure. Again, you'll have to check country by country. You may have mandatory testing upon arrival as well. As more of the world is vaccinated, you may see that proof of vaccination may also become a requirement prior to entry in some locations. Pre-trip preparation will become more important. So we're going to see more people turning to the experts for travel, going through travel agencies. You will see a need to track these entry and exit requirements. So the model of kind of jumping on a plane and hopping from country to country across Europe with little planning, at least for the immediate future, is not really a reality. To update yourself, you can follow information on the CDC website and to understand these travel restrictions, as well as in-country curfews, closures, and mobility restrictions within region. In the airports, COVID has also brought on new innovations. You may have noticed that when booking travel, things have gotten a little bit more flexible, and we are likely to see that flexibility remain into the future. You will see more contactless check-ins. Visual passport capabilities are being explored, as well as these vaccine passports, which we talked about earlier. You're going to see contact tracing from airlines. You will see extra attention to sanitation on board your flight. We may get more spacious cabins, who knows? We can all hope. I'm not sure about that one, but who knows, maybe. And then with the rollout of vaccines, you'll see, sadly, that richer countries with access to the vaccine will be able to bounce back sooner. For study abroad, the 6 most popular destinations for American students have historically all been within Western Europe. And this trend is likely to be even further enforced in the immediate return to travel post-pandemic. So another factor, safety concerns, will be a driving factor as well. So beyond Western Europe, for example, in my office, we're seeing students attracted to places like South Korea that have received high marks for their coronavirus response. And in travel, the first travelers will be the vaccinated travelers going to destinations where local populations are also vaccinated. You'll continue to see that ecotourism and outdoor activities will be the first to bounce back. The global South as a destination is going to take a longer time to bounce back. Similarly, you'll see that small mom and pop tourism ventures, so tour guides, small museums, boutique hotels, this sort of thing will be the hardest hit. Some of them will not be able to wait out a return to their normal tourism numbers in their location. Travelers as well have new concerns for hygiene, and smaller businesses will just find it harder to meet these new standards. your guidebooks. You may need to think about going back and looking at updating your Lonely Planet. So our guidebooks are going to need to get revamped with new health and safety measures as well to kind of understand this new landscape, so that your favorite spot in your Lonely Planet pre-pandemic, it just, I hope that it's still in existence, but we are going to see a big change in sort of the local landscapes. So that's a brief introduction. There's a lot of uncertainty in the field of international education right now, as well as in the travel industry. And however, I am hopeful that this pause has provided our field with an opportunity to really reset and to really consider our practices, what we do and how we do it, and to think about what really matters for our students and for our world. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Casey Love, and I do look forward to your questions later. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Annie. I know that your office has been dealing with such complicated issues right now, and I'm just very grateful for your leadership during this very difficult time. To give our attendees a more in-depth look at how study abroad works these days, we're really excited to have some students here to talk with you about their experiences. We're going to kick it off with a video by junior Charlotte Ehlers. Charlotte is from Houston, Texas. She's studying business and international relations at Tulane, and she's currently one of the very few students at Tulane who successfully petitioned to a study abroad this semester. So currently, Charlotte is abroad. She's living in Vienna, but she's taking most of her courses remotely. Charlotte has very graciously made a short video to show everybody what a day in the life of a student's like living in Vienna, taking classes abroad. So we'll start that video now.
Hi y'all, or as I say in Vienna, Grüß Gott. My name's Charlotte Ehlers. I'm currently a junior and studying marketing and international relations and German at home, but studying German literature here in Austria. So I just wanted to take you through my day. As you saw, I wake up around 7:30, 8 o'clock, brush my teeth, and after that I go exercising. So if there's anything that COVID has taught me and the pandemic has taught me, is that I needed to get creative when trying to explore the city creatively. So for me, that meant going on jogs and bike rides every other day. So in that way, I'd be able to go to all these different important monuments that I could at least look at if I could, even if that meant I couldn't go inside them. So then I'd return home, grab my bike. The bike culture is huge here in Vienna. They have separate lanes for bike riders, which I think is amazing. Also quite safe. So again, I'll just go to different places within Vienna. Here, I'm actually very close to the city center. If I had turned my camera to the right a little bit more, you might have been able to see one of the most famous churches called the Stephansdom. But unfortunately, I did not turn that way. But anyways, I usually return home and get some breakfast and shower to get ready for my classes for the day. So usually I'll have 1 or 2 classes, all in German, and those go by pretty quick. Then after that, it's a little break for lunch, and then I start the second half of my day. And twice a week I actually get COVID tested because I play rugby here in Vienna, and because of that we again have to test ourselves. And after that, just depends on what I need to do for the day. So in this case, I had to go grocery shopping, but other days I will take the tram to the city center, and where I can find a lot of different things. Or I'll go outside the city center on the weekends just to walk around. Yeah, or when everything is open, I go to museums or open markets. You can get real good deals there. After that, I'll return home, cook something, and or I'll try a different type of food that I've never had before. But I always do keep it a little close to home as well. So, for example, Thanksgiving, and not to forget a good old king cake. But after that, I try to do a little more work for school before probably one of my favorite parts of the day, which is heading up to bed and getting ready for the next day.
Excellent. So now I'd like to introduce a student who's here with us this evening, Will Dunford. Will is a junior who's studying finance and political economy at Tulane, and he's currently engaged in a remote study abroad experience. So what does that mean? I'll have Will talk about it, but essentially he's studying abroad or studying at a Copenhagen institution from the comforts of his bedroom at his family home in Mandeville. So let's hear all about that. Go ahead, Will.
Hey everyone, thanks to Professor Love for introducing me. And yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about my study abroad experience. Like a lot of people, one of the reasons that I ended up at Tulane was because of the breadth and the depth of options available for study abroad, because I knew that, being a global citizen was something that was really important to me in my education. And I was really excited about my original plans to spend a year in Latin America. But like everybody, things changed and COVID hit, and, I really learned how to be more flexible. So I ended up, spending my fall in New Orleans at Tulane, and the spring, where I am right now, in Denmark, but I'm actually at home in Louisiana. So, even though this wasn't exactly what I was expecting, I still think that I've had a really rewarding experience, and I'd love to tell you guys a little bit about it. I think one of the things that's been really cool about my experience with the Danish Institute for Study Abroad in Copenhagen is how small the class sizes and the cohorts have been for all of my courses. Because the program is online, a lot of students didn't end up continuing with the program, but the ones who have really been able to get close. And I know I've set up Zooms with people, from schools across the country. And I think more importantly, I've really been able to develop, really strong relationships with my professors, in other countries. In the DIS program, I have 4 different professors. 2 are from Denmark, another one's from Ireland, and another one's from France. And, because of these relationships and because of these small cohort sizes, I've been able to really delve deeper into the academics and understand how teaching styles and how, education and life in general, just differs, in different countries. And, we've also been able to, like I said, develop more, deeply into academics. And, it looks like I'll even have the opportunity to do some research with one of my professors. I'm taking a course on conspiracy theories. So he's tasking some of the students on writing, basically delving deeper into some more modern conspiracy theories and, how those beliefs differ. We've also had a wonderful panel of guest speakers, so I've really been able to see those perspectives from different people. And yeah, also, just even though I'm not really able to be there, I've still, because of my professors going above and beyond, have given us walking tours of Copenhagen. So if I do end up getting to travel out there for a little bit later this spring, I'm ready to jump in with some really strong relationships and just a really good experience overall. So yeah, that's a little bit about my experience, and I'm happy to answer any other questions that you guys have later on. Back to you, Professor Love.
Thanks, Will. I just want to ask one quick follow-up to you, Will. I know that there was some hope that you would be able to go to Copenhagen later this spring or maybe even early this summer. Is that in the works?
Yes, we have seen the date move back a couple times. Right now, it's looking like there's a possibility that I can fly out on April 20th, which means that I'd be able to get to spend the last month of the program out in Copenhagen with the beautiful, late spring, early summer weather, and can meet all the students and the professors that I've really developed those relationships with. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Mine are crossed for you as well. Thanks, Will. So now for another take on study abroad, we have Kayla Denwood. Kayla is a senior studying economics and international development, and she too was one of the very few students who were permitted to study abroad last fall. So we have Kayla here, who's going to tell us a little bit more about her experience at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. Go ahead, Kayla.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Professor Love, for the introduction. As Professor Love stated, my name is Kayla Denwood, and I am a graduating senior studying economics and international development with a minor in Spanish. A little bit more about my background in study abroad. I actually went abroad 3 times during my Tulane career, even though when I first arrived to Tulane, I didn't think I was going to study abroad at all. I got my passport for free through Tulane and studied abroad my freshman year in Nairobi, Kenya with the Newcomb Institute. And then the summer after that, I was able to go abroad again with an internship with a Tulane alum who had a social enterprise in Asunción, Paraguay. And so coming into my senior year, I realized I had space in my schedule. I really wanted to study abroad again. So I applied for the Gilman International Scholarship and received it. So I had the funding. All I had to do was apply for a program, and I chose the University of Edinburgh in Edinburgh, Scotland. And so I was all set to go for the fall of my senior year. Then, of course, we all got the COVID news, and I figured, I was not going to end up going anymore. But then in late June, I want to say, I got an email from the University of Edinburgh saying that they would happily have me on campus if I still felt like going. So I decided to petition Tulane's decision and ended up being able to come to Edinburgh. That being said, it was very short, within a very short time frame. So I think I heard the news in late June, and I ended up getting on a plane like mid-August. I remember I bought my plane tickets like 2 weeks before I was supposed to arrive. And it was all just very hectic. I honestly did not think I was going to end up going until like my feet were on the plane. And then I ended up in Edinburgh, which was really awesome. That being said, it definitely was not the study abroad experience that I envisioned for myself. I expected to be able to travel around Europe, meet a lot of new people, do everything that I wanted to do. But I think one thing that students should be aware of is that during these times, you definitely have to be willing to go with the flow and follow restrictions, which is something that I definitely learned while I was in Edinburgh. So, I got to learn more about economics. That's why I chose University of Edinburgh to study more about economics, since the father of economics went to the university. I also got to take Swahili, which is a class that I really, really wanted to take, but wasn't able to at Tulane. I still got to explore the city. One thing that was really important in my petition was to make sure that the place I was going to be safer than New Orleans, and especially Chicago, where I'm from. And so I think that's a big reason why my petition was successful. So, the city was still open, and I could go to museums for free. I could hike around the city. I could go to the library and do tons of other amazing things. So I really got to know the city very well. And I also got to meet a lot of new people. So when I first arrived, I was told my program was going to be hybrid, so I would have classes in person, but it ended up being completely virtual for me. So I didn't have opportunity to meet many of classmates except online through WhatsApp groups. So for example, we had a 400-person exchange student WhatsApp group, and that kind of branched off into a bunch of different WhatsApp groups. So I was part of like the vegan WhatsApp group and the hiking WhatsApp group and things like that. So I got to meet a lot of new people from all over. So I would definitely say it wasn't the experience I envisioned. I still planned on traveling a lot. And then when I got there, I realized that was not going to be possible. But I think I really got a lot out of the experience in terms of learning how to create a life for myself in a place that I knew absolutely nobody, had no experience in, and with the added difficulty of COVID behind it. So I definitely learned a lot, and it was a really great experience.
Kayla, thank you so much for sharing those experiences with us. Will, thank you to you too. I hope you guys will stick around for our Q&A session. I also loved hearing from Charlotte, even though she couldn't be here with us this evening. And I just want to say to our students that I really admire your persistence in pursuing study abroad during these very uncertain times. As Annie said earlier, students studying abroad today really have to demonstrate a higher level of adaptability, resilience, tolerance for ambiguity, and you all definitely exhibit those qualities. So with that, I'd like to move to our question and answer section of our webinar. We see many questions coming in through the chat for our attendees. You can keep those coming. We're getting a lot of questions about the status of fall. And again, as Annie said earlier, Provost Robin Foreman has approved fall study abroad. And so largely we are deferring to our partners, our institutional partners and our provider program partners abroad in determining whether or not students will actually be able to pursue those programs. So I just want to throw some of those questions out to Annie. People are asking, when will we definitely know if our accepted study abroad children will be going abroad? If they are going abroad in the fall and their country closes, can they switch to another program or country? What is the process if a junior has been accepted to study abroad, but then decides to postpone it for a year? Annie, you want to start with those questions?
Great. Yeah, it is. It's a difficult moment right now for planning for study abroad because there is just so much uncertainty. To give you guys some numbers to think about, while in this academic year we've had 20 students whose petitions were approved that actually were able to study either as Kayla did in Edinburgh or as well as doing remotely, so 20. But over this year, we have worked with about 1,500 study abroad applications. So that means students that have applied to study abroad, but then a program was canceled and it was changed, or study abroad was not permitted and they had to be shifted. So it is quite an uncertain, the planning right now is quite difficult. So looking forward to the fall. As Dr. Love mentioned, from the Tulane perspective, study abroad will be allowed. And so the next step is that we are working with students to help educate them and their families to understand how they might monitor the in-country policies of both their country and then their local program. So there are there's no way to give exact deadlines on this. We get cancellations and shifts and changes on a weekly basis. So, for example, already for fall, we know that travel restrictions in Australia and New Zealand will continue to the fall. So all students who would study, who had applied and were approved for study abroad this coming fall for Australia and New Zealand, all of those students are approved to study abroad through Tulane, but we have to put them on different programs because Australia and New Zealand are not open to study abroad for fall 2021. We've seen this happen in many programs in Morocco so far, and there are other locations as well. So in terms of your planning, the best thing to do is to remain in close contact with the Office of Study Abroad, and then also your program provider. It's also important to follow the local country restrictions to get an idea and a sense of what travel looks like. For study abroad, you can, if you go to the local country website, you can see whether academic travel falls within the category of being accepted. So there are often special permissions that are needed for travel, which are the example that Kayla gave, which are the example of the student video that you saw. They were able to travel. Now on site, there's going to be differences. It's not going to look like a pre-pandemic world. And so that's really important that as we're preparing our students, because if those programs that are able to travel in the fall will have some of these restrictions that Kayla mentioned, that you're seeing in the video, that students will need to follow. And these are real things. These are curfews that are instituted by the country or by the city. These are limits on gathering sizes. So students that would need to be prepared to follow those regulations. In the case of Will, for example, in terms of when will you know, we thought Will's program to Copenhagen was running up until the week before he departed. And so, we can't predict what sort of country changes will happen. And Will continues right now to monitor the situation in Denmark to see Right now, he mentioned it's been postponed 3 times when he's allowed to travel. Right now, he's thinking towards the end of April, he'll be able to travel. But again, into fall 2021, we will see uncertainty with travel in most locations. So you will have to do a monitoring, check your pulse on how willing you are to deal with those uncertainties. And if that is not something that your student might feel comfortable with, then it might be worth postponing. And there's no, we are, as I mentioned, 1,000+ applications we've already been working with to shift and move and change. This has been a real unprecedented time in the Office of Study Abroad. And, we're seeing more students that are going to decide to study abroad as seniors, that will think about a new moment when it fits best within their academic plan. The other question I see in the chat is around, what does learning look like? For many of our international partners, so students directly enrolling in institutions, you'll see that much of the coursework will be online. And so we're likely to see a lot of hybrid learning on many of our study abroad, where courses are taught online, but in country with co-curricular activities and things like that for fall 2021.
One other thing that I just want to bring up, and this was a question that was posted in the chat, is, if students do postpone, what do they do about fall course registrations? Currently, NTC approved a policy that if students are approved to study abroad in the fall, they can also concurrently register for credits here at Tulane in the fall in case their programs are canceled or in the case that they do decide not to go abroad. So we do have them covered in terms of continuing to make progress toward their degree. Annie, we're getting a question too about mobility while students are abroad. One person asked, my student was told that if she attends a program in Madrid, that she might not be able to travel throughout Europe or even Spain. Do you have any insight on that?
Yes, this is true. Students will need to follow local country guidelines in terms of travel. So currently, if you all are following the vaccine rollout and spikes in COVID cases, you'll see that many countries are operating under strict regulations and requirements. So people living in certain regions are not able to leave that region. In certain cities, might not be able to leave certain cities. Madrid, I think the curfew right now is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So, there are all these different restrictions that one would need to follow. We don't have a crystal ball to know exactly what it would look like into the fall. But it is likely that many of these restrictions will occur. I would imagine that most programs will either not allow or highly discourage travel from one country to the next, because as as I'm explaining with these travel bans and restrictions, they can happen overnight. So if you're studying abroad in Spain and all of a sudden, I'm gonna fly to Paris for the weekend, at this moment, travel is not easy to navigate, and there could be a lockdown that comes into place that could really affect that student adversely.
So we have a question for Kayla. A couple of panelists want to hear a little bit more about your living situation in Scotland, and also more about your daily life in Edinburgh. Was the city open, but was the campus mostly closed? Is that why most of your classes were online? Were you able to access the campus? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in my case, Edinburgh, University of Edinburgh doesn't really have a central campus. So it's just a bunch of university buildings located around the city that you could have gone to if you had a class there. Unfortunately for me, my program was completely virtual, but there were a lot of my other classmates who had classes on campus in classrooms. It was just for my economics program, I'm guessing because the professors are all kind of a little old, so they just didn't want to put anyone at risk there. So, I was still able to access classrooms if I really needed to go there. I went to the library a lot, so that was still open. A bit more about just my everyday life. It was very similar to Charlotte's actually, where you just kind of wake up and find something to do. Since my classes were mostly asynchronous, not like Tulane where you actually have to tune in at a certain time, I could really just do those all later at night, like before I'm going to bed. And during the day, I really spent sort of being a tourist around the city. So like I would go hiking one day, or I'd go to a bunch of different restaurants, or just hang out with some of my friends during the day while doing my classes at night. So it was a pretty ideal situation. To speak a little bit more about, being ready to go with the flow, I would say when I arrived, Edinburgh was completely open. Like you could go to pubs, you could do whatever you wanted to do. But over time, things started to close as numbers were getting higher, and that was because of the new strand of virus that none of us knew about. So by the time I was leaving, they completely shut down everything because the new strand, and that was the time where they announced the new strand and flights were completely shutting down. It was released like a week before I was supposed to come back, like my flight. So I was constantly checking the news to see like whether US shut down flights completely. I had to change my flight a couple of times. So it's definitely, you have to be prepared and ready to make a move. Like I reached out to some of my friends to see like if my flight does get canceled, if US bans UK travel, can I stay at your house? That kind of thing. So it's just making sure you're always prepared for any possible solution, I would say.
Kayla, somebody else wants to know, were you able to go hiking, for example, with people in your WhatsApp group, or were your interactions primarily online?
Yeah, so I would definitely say you are able to go outside and hike. That was something I was always able to count on, even though things were shutting down slowly. We weren't really allowed to leave the city limits of Edinburgh. Like it was very, very looked down upon. So I didn't personally do that, but I was still able to explore the city and go hiking. Edinburgh is very hilly, so that was like the one thing that I always knew I could do was to hike. And my interactions were a lot of the times online, but after spending so many hours checking WhatsApp, you want to meet people in person. So that was definitely something that also happened, is that you could go outside in groups of 6 or less. And so that's something I chose to do a lot with the people I was meeting on these WhatsApp groups.
So Kayla, you've talked a little bit about your newfound ability to go with the flow. Will, I want to turn it over to you and ask you, what have you learned about yourself outside of the academic learning that's happening in your classes?
Yeah, I think that like a lot of people, one of the biggest things that I've learned this entire year is flexibility. I know during my first 2 years at Tulane, I was always the type of person where I always had to have the 5-year plan of I'm going to be doing this at exactly this time and got to get this job and go to this place and do everything. And then I really, with COVID and with everything, I just couldn't do that, and learning how to be flexible and recognizing that things are working out, things are going to be okay. I'm still learning things, life is still good here in Louisiana, and just going with the flow and getting to enjoy it has been really valuable for me. And I think it'll really help me end up in a career and in a situation later in life that I'll really be happy with, and not that I feel like I need to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know our office definitely likes to underscore the type of life lessons that students gain through these experiences, that they are, in our eyes, as important as the academic learning that takes place. Annie, I'll throw it back to you. We had a couple of questions about how our office is cultivating intercultural learning opportunities, how we are trying to cultivate the skills that we associate with global citizenship among Tulane undergraduates during this era of limited mobility.
Thanks. Yeah, this has been a time that we have really thought about new ways to explore partnerships. So one way that we've done this is launch a new series called Global Perspectives, which takes important topics of our time, climate change, Black Lives Matter in a global context, social protests in a global context, cross-cultural exchange, and talks about these topics with a diverse group of our colleagues and students, not only from Tulane, but also from our partner institutions. And we've done those events in English and Portuguese and Spanish. We've also had Arabic table hours. So we're using the virtual space to find ways to to create dialogue for our students on important global topics of our time. You can see that on our the topics on our website, and also links through our YouTube of past sessions on this. And in some ways for our partners abroad, this has been a great development, because in terms of equitability, study abroad as an industry for US students that going abroad has been large over the years. Oftentimes, many of the students in our partner institutions, for visa, immigration reasons, for financial reasons, aren't able to come to the United States in the same way that US students go abroad. And so these virtual exchanges have been really fruitful with our partners. And there's been a lot of interest as a way for their students to get international experiences connecting with US college students as well. So that is one way. We're exploring different ways of partnering in the classroom. So ways in which through our partnerships with colleagues abroad, faculty can work together on joint research projects, that certain kind of site visits that might happen in study abroad settings can be embedded into classroom experiences. We, in terms of prep for study abroad or learning in the pandemic, we've had to bring all of our advising resources online. So for example, we do an identity-based pre-departure conference where we talk about study abroad, from what it's like to study abroad as an LGBTQ student, or what it's like to how health and safety can be viewed in a cultural lens. And so we've put that into an online format. And then our peer advisors in the office have been working really hard to think about virtual ways of engaging with a student body. So they've been creating, for example, a travel map with destinations both in New Orleans and globally that students would recommend. And on our limited on-campus events here at Tulane, for example, we have a global cafe, and we did an event on healing rituals from around the world, where we highlighted different ways in world traditions of kind of going through this moment of healing, where we had students come and learn about different rituals from different places.
Annie, we're also getting a few questions about summer study abroad. I know you talked a little bit about summer 2021, but what do you think summer 2022 might look like? And we are also getting a question about how popular summer study abroad is compared to fall and spring study abroad.
Yeah, so at Tulane, we are just as a field in international education, we're seeing interest in summer increasing among students. Summer is a great way to sort of have that short-term experience with international exchange. And at Tulane, our model, our institutional model for aid is a fall-spring aid cycle. So that means for our office, we're really thinking strategically about how to provide funding opportunities for our students in the summer, so that we can offer a portfolio and offer it to all students, since their financial and merit-based aid does not cover them in the summer. And so summer 2022 and beyond, we are continuing to develop faculty-led programs at Tulane. We have a small number of faculty-led programs. And then we also work with many different partners and providers where students can go on these programs in the summer and transfer them back. So I do think that summer is a time where we see potential for this. And we really like to see this as Kayla gave the example. It's so great to have her here, because she joined us with our passport caravan that helped first-time passport students get a passport, and then went on a summer program as dipping her feet in the water. She'd never thought she was gonna, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Kayla, but she didn't think that travel was her study abroad was going to become so important to her career, and now she's gone abroad multiple times. So we are hopeful for summer.
Annie, sort of along those same lines, you talked a little bit about our efforts to make study abroad more inclusive and accessible to all Tulane students. Do you want to highlight some of those initiatives and talk about how they have changed as a result of the pandemic?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different ways in which we do. First and foremost, thinking really critically about meeting students where they are and getting open feedback from students about what they need. And so this means partnerships across campus with centers and colleagues and student groups that might not traditionally think that study abroad is an option for them, and creating platforms where students can engage and talk about it and see it as a reality. So that's everything from, you know, working with targeted student groups to do advising sessions, to using our peer advisors as kind of the tentacles of the office that can extend, and then thinking about our own office practices. So in terms of advising, really thinking critically about the role of the advisor, the ways in which we talk with students about international experiences, thinking about the institutional structural barriers that exist to study abroad, and really making an effort to address them directly. Funding is a big one. Funding is a huge obstacle. One of the programs that I lead, that I'm really it's kind of one of my heart programs. We do a summer program that's a short-term cultural immersion program that links. We so far have done this in Senegal, in the Dominican Republic, and Brazil, linking cultural experiences back to New Orleans through the transatlantic world. So looking in Senegal, looking at the transatlantic slave trade and comparisons and colonization practices. In Dominican Republic, we're looking at immigration. And in Brazil, cultures of performance, and linking them back to New Orleans. So thinking about the programming that we run, thinking about the types of programs that we list, so that the programs, the portfolio is available and interesting to a wide and diverse student group. Thinking about the staff that we have in our office, and peer advisors and extension, so that we can be representative. And really listening, I would say really listening and taking critical feedback from our students.
So we're running a little short on time. In our last few minutes, I wanted to turn it back over to Kayla and Will and ask you guys about your post-graduation plans. I realize that you might not have a job lined up. Will, you're only a junior, but what are you thinking going forward? And perhaps how has your study abroad experience informed those postgraduate plans?
Did you want to go first, Will?
Sure. Yeah, I can go. Yeah, I'm only a junior. So, you know, I do have an internship, which will hopefully be in person, fingers crossed, in New York City this summer. But, you know, I think that my abroad experience, and also, you know, my small abroad experience that I've had so far has made me really want to do more. You know, I had the Altman experience in the summer of 2019, and then I've also had this virtual experience. And, you know, my original plan was to jump straight into my career, but now I'm starting to explore some other opportunities like Fulbright and, you know, other opportunities, so that I could get more of that abroad experience and, you know, see a little bit more of the world. But we'll see. I think a lot will definitely change, you know, in the next year, but I'm excited.
Yeah, for me, I would say that, you know, studying abroad at Tulane's definitely opened up my eyes to having an international career. And it actually is the reason I became an international development major, was going abroad to Kenya for that, during my freshman year. So after I graduate, I'm hoping to pursue an international development career. I actually made it to the finalist round of the Youth Ambassador Program for Expo 2020 Dubai. So hopefully in the fall, I'll be working as a youth ambassador at the World Fair in Dubai. Fingers crossed, hopefully it's still going on by then. But that's what I have in the works. And then I'm hoping to go on to pursue a graduate degree in international economic policy.
Wow. Well, best of luck to both of you. We do have one more question that we thought was quite interesting about fundraising efforts as it relates to scholarships for travel abroad for students who are unable to afford those. I will say our office does have several endowed scholarships that support study abroad, both during the academic school year and also during the summer when we feel that scholarships can have more of an impact because they don't carry a financial aid implication. But we would encourage any of you who are interested in supporting these efforts to reach out to Newcomb-Tulane College and to our development officer, Ryan Meck, who can guide you in learning more about giving opportunities to support equity and accessibility in study abroad. So with that, we will have to end this conversation. I want to extend a huge thanks to Dean Skinner, to Annie Gibson, to our students Will and Kayla for talking with us today. And I want to thank you all for joining us. We had a lot of questions come through the chat this evening that we were unable to answer. We have saved the chat and we will try to respond to many of your queries. And in addition, we will post our website where you can find many of these answers to these questions. So thank you all again for joining us tonight and have a great evening.